right. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Before I forget, and my apologies that my back to the camera over there too. All right. Unless you hear to the contrary, we are meeting next Thursday. There is a chance that we won't. But if Allison goes into labor and I need to start driving to Los Angeles, we'll send a message and say class won't meet.
Baby took precedence.
I'm sorry.
Baby took precedence.
Baby will take precedence, but the likelihood is that we'll be okay for Thursday, and then we'll start driving as of Friday morning. That's the plan. So make sure that through Thursday morning, make sure that you check emails or whatever just before you.
It will be here.
Right, we are here unless you hear unless you read otherwise or don't hear too many conflicts. Okay. Secondly, for those who were involved, there's a handout and there's available to see, we're getting technologically advanced here. This goes back to when the other day, a couple of weeks ago, I'm in trouble. When we were talking about the gematria and the numerical values for each letter. I meant to have that kind of a chart available to you, and I didn't. So there it is, but we're not going back to it. But that's a handout if you want to play the game.
Yes.
If you want to play the game. All right.
Thank you.
Now we started with the timeline of Jewish law. I don't even remember how far.
So you don't want to sign it?
No, we're done with that one.
We got into the Gemara because
We got to the Gemara. Okay, all right. So let me go on. Let me do a little bit of the Gemara. Then we're going to go back to the Mishnah. Then we're going to go back to Midrash, or maybe in the other order, and then get to codes and whatever. Okay, so just a quick, and maybe even a quicker summary. We begin with Torah. Everything begins with Torah, and if not the exact quote, then it might be some kind of a reworking of the statement from the Torah, which might mean, here I defer to some of my Hebrew reading students, it might mean changing around the vowels in a particular word to have it make a little more sense, or to try to provide what we call a proof text. Okay? In order, for anything to be valid, authentic, viable, credible as a source of Jewish law or practice or belief, you have to be able to base it in one way or another on Torah. But that doesn't mean that you can't twist it a little bit. Like I said, by changing the vowels around a little bit.
Well, there are no vowels in the Torah anyway, so you can put whatever you want in them.
No, that's not true. There's it's just that the letter, the language is written, or the literature is written without vowels. But people who are familiar enough with the language know what the vowels would be. That's what I've been trying to point some of those things out to people who are studying it. But you can. Yes, and admittedly, so as Rabbi Jonathan might say, and I don't mean Rabbi Jonathan, who was the scribe here writing the Torah, but as Rabbi Jonathan might say for the sake of trying to prove my point, it's not Bereshit bara Elohim. It's not in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. It's Berosh it Bero Elohim. In the beginning, there was a creation of God, comma, heaven and earth. Okay. Now, now that's a whole different change. Now, Rabbi Jonathan may just be saying that for the sake of argument, for the sake of let's debate that. What does that mean? What might that mean for us? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they can do those kinds of little changes, but you have to have either explicitly or implicitly, you have to have a proof text. There has to be a quote that as the bottom line. And incidentally, that holds true in New Testament as well as Old Testament or Torah, for the sake of the literature. Okay. What we did say that coming out of Torah, there are 613 mitzvot, 613 commandments, as well as lots of other, if such and such would happen, if such and such didn't happen, if such and such might happen, those are not mitzvot, those are not commandments, those are, what should we call them? The basis for case law, yes, and hypotheticals, I guess, but they still, most likely they either happened and the question was brought to, if you follow the text, it was brought to Moses, right? Or brought to the elders of the people and say, this kind of thing happened. What should we do? Sometimes when Moses would give an answer, sometimes the elders of the people would give an answer. More usually in the narrative, Moses goes into the tent of meeting, into the Ohel Moed, and consults God, and comes back out and says, here's the answer. Like with the daughters of Tzlofchad. Okay, we said, well, why can't women inherit property if there's no male heir? Things like that. Never happened before. Certainly didn't happen in Egypt, where no Israelite was going to be asking anybody, how do I inherit land? They didn't own land. Okay, so here all of a sudden they're wandering in the desert. Here's a particular family, here's a particular clan or tribe with no male heirs. The women got together and said, what happens? Moses said, I don't know. I don't know. Let me think about it. Let me consult God. Let me, whatever. Comes back out and says the question or the suggestion of the daughters of Tzlofchad is just. Okay, and therefore women can inherit, at least until they marry somebody from somebody else. But anyway, all right, we won't go there. Okay, so it has to be based on either the wording of a particular law or some kind of an answer, some kind of an experience or a hypothetical that is discussed by Moses or in the Torah. So we have the 613 commandments, as well as all of these other questions of customs, ceremonies, beliefs. What do we do when such and such happens? But they're not in any kind of order, right? So, and those of us certainly in our day, but probably 2,000 years ago, also did not have the whole Torah memorized. Or if they did, they didn't necessarily rely on their memory. They also didn't have Rabbi Google or Rabbi Bling or whatever, any of the others around. Okay, the one that we use today now is called Sefaria. In other words, Sefer, right? Yeah, S-A-F-E-R is a book, right? And Sefaria is a library. But there's now a website, Sefaria.org.
Right.
Okay, that is an amazing collection And while they ask for donations, but technically it's free, and I can verify the authenticity of everything that it contains because they've got my rabbinic thesis there. Okay, so absolutely, we know that everything is credible. Okay, anyway, so nothing is in order. So a number of different rabbis, including some of the famous ones like Hillel, tried to put all of those mitzvot, all those commandments, all of the practices in a particular order. The one that maintained itself, that everyone's familiar with, is called the Mishnah. Rabbi Judah the Prince, Yehuda HaNasi, and in rabbinic literature they just call him Rabbi, not even the Rabbi, but Rabbi. If you ever see that that kind of a reference, Rabbi said, if there's no other name associated with it, that's Judah the Prince. Puts all of those laws into 6 orders, the 6 orders of the Mishnah, 6 volumes, if you will. They were listed here, the agricultural laws about all the holidays and Shabbat, laws of women, that's marriage and divorce especially, torts and damages, sacrifices, and pure and impure, clean and unclean things. And of course, the minute that something is written down, someone's going to come along and say, no, wait a minute, we do it a little bit differently. Okay, today we would talk in terms of Orthodox or traditional versus liberal. Okay, then it may have been Hillel versus Shammai. Somewhere in the middle, it was the Ashkenazim versus the Sephardim. We'll talk a little bit about that, later on. But so Judah the Prince, Rabbi, makes his 6-volume collection of Mishnah, which means teaching, as the order of all of those laws. So okay, we got a question about agriculture or a question about one of the holidays. We know at least which volume we know to go to, rather than the whole Torah. And then I mentioned on that sheet that there were some extraneous laws or these hypotheticals or things like that that are collected in what's called a Tosefta. And I gave the example of Tosefta, or modern Hebrew, that's Tosafot. So those are there's your female plural there. Okay, all right. But that's supplements. Okay, that's what goes along with the main course. Okay, so if you go into a restaurant in Israel and you order schnitzel, right?
Yes,
they're gonna say, what else? What do you want for your tosafot? Do you want rice and corn? Do you want fries? Do you want do you want vegetables? Do you want a salad? Whatever. Those are tosafot. Those are extras. Okay. All right. Then over the next several hundred years, classes like this particular class at Beth Shalom Temple Center in Green Valley, Arizona, okay, get together on a regular basis and start discussing, learning, teaching, debating, arguing, questioning. Well, wait a minute, my rabbi back in Minnesota told me such and such, and my rabbi back in Hungary, well, you didn't talk to your rabbis in Hungary, but okay. You get the idea. Maine or whatever. Wait a minute. They said this. So what do you mean this? And so the point is that all of those debates, discussions, questions, okay, are all they're all written down. Now this is long before shorthand, long before stenography, long before recordings and whatever. Okay. So you'd have all of these notes quoted verbatim that Rabbi Roman said, or Rabbi, well, I'm using first names. Okay, so Rabbi Norm said, here's the text that we're going to be studying. Love your neighbor as yourself. Okay. Rabbi Jean immediately jumped up and said, wait a minute. which am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to love my neighbor first, or am I supposed to love myself first? Which is more important? It says love my neighbor as myself. I have to decide, do I love my neighbor more than how do I do that? I don't understand. Okay, but my rabbi back in Michigan, when I asked that question, told me such and such. What was your rabbi's name? Oh, it was Rabbi Klein. Oh, okay. Well, we got to look up where Rabbi Klein's background came from and who Rabbi Klein studied with. Because Rabbi Klein may have studied with somebody who interpreted it differently than the rabbi who taught Rabbi Norm.
Oh.
And everybody, and just like Chris said, if you got it here, is it right? So this is what, if you've got this handout,
I don't have that.
you don't have that. Okay, well, use this for a minute, okay?
Which one is that? Which one is that?
That's the one that I handed out last time. I don't, so we may not have it. So a page of Talmud, in the darkest, blackest, boldest print or font, starts with a quotation, and it usually has the Hebrew letters Mem and Shin. I don't know if does it show it on that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So that means Mishnah. So then here's, we would put colon, right? Okay. And then the 2 or 3 lines here, that's the quotation from the Mishnah.
Okay.
Okay. Which pretty much would be a quote and then the majority opinion or the standard understanding of the quote or the mitzvah from the Torah. So that would be there. Then start following that, and I don't have all the different colors, and I'm not going to make it on it. Following that, they would start with, but Rabbi Jean asked this question, and then Rabbi Linda jumped in, and then Rabbi Diane, and all of these different people start asking questions, and it may go off into 17 different directions.
Is that
Eventually,
the one they call the Tosafit?
I'm sorry?
Is that the one they call the Tosafit?
We're not,
No.
we're not there yet. We're not there yet. Okay, all right. But just all of those different commentaries. Okay. With trying to either understand or prove a point of explaining further. Now, it might be because where the particular rabbis, okay, so the two of us happen to both base ourselves in Michigan, right? Okay, but but somebody else who got a lot of training in Maine may have a totally different orientation to questions of Jewish law, Jewish practice, whatever it might be. Somebody else who has a more orthodox orientation or a more mystical orientation, like Lori Brother comes along and says, wait a minute, I see this entirely differently. When you talk about this and that, but the point is that it's all included. Everything is included respectfully. Everything was included. Majority opinion, minority opinion, even those that they wound up debunking. Okay, but they still included it. It's like transcript, if you will. So where's the page? Okay, so the page here, then all of these different things around here, and what it means by there on this sheet, if it's got the number, it says, okay, so this is the Mishnah, this is the Gemara, which Gemara means completion. So it's but it doesn't complete it actually, but they call it a completion. Then Rashi is always on the inside. If this is the book, So
The gutter.
it's Hebrew,
The gutter.
the gutter, right, okay, so if this is the gutter, so Rashi is always in the inside here, because he's the most famous. Then the Tosafists are actually Rashi's grandsons, okay? Rashi did not have any sons, he only had daughters, okay? Which will keep that in mind, because it's gonna come back up in a conversation. But, so Rashi's grandsons are the Tosafists, okay? Then Nisim in Tunis, but that's now getting into more of a Sephardic interpretation and questioning. And then farther down, it gets all the way down in this particular version, the way that we have it, all the way down into 18th and 19th century commentators. In the most famous version of the Talmud is this, which is what they call the Vilna edition, published in Vilna. Now, there are two Talmuds. There's one Mishnah, or famous Mishnah. There are some other. There are two Talmuds. And I think I put that on the front page here, right? Okay, so yeah, so the first is in Palestine or Tiberias. Okay, but that's known as the Palestinian Talmud, which is the lesser known. So if and then the more famous Talmud is in Babylon. And so if someone makes a reference and says, "Oh, this comes from the Talmud," most of the time that's referring to the Babylonian Talmud. If it comes from the Palestinian Talmud, or sometimes it's known as the Jerusalem Talmud, even though they didn't live in Jerusalem, what are you going to do? Okay, all right. It's like we did it in Green Valley, but we're going to call it the New York. Okay, right. But if you see a reference and someone says in the Talmud on page 63a of such and such a tractate, such and such a book, it says, and they give you the quote, the likelihood is that it's Babylonian Talmud. Okay, if it's Palestinian or Jerusalem Talmud, it would specifically say. In the palace, it might say, 63a PAL from the Palestinian in or JER Jerusalem.
Why do you
Jerusalem.
reference Tiberias here?
Because that's where most of the rabbis were living.
Oh.
Okay,
So we credit it to Palestine and maybe call it Jerusalem.
right, exactly.
Exactly.
They were living, or maybe it was even edited, if you will. And again, don't forget, this is long before any kind of printing press. So they're all writing all of this by hand. Okay, so here's an example of how this goes. So this is a little play, play acting, and bear with me, okay? And some of we even did this, I think, 3-4 years ago. So some of you may have fond memories of doing. Okay, what is the first mitzvah? What's the first commandment in the Torah?
Be fruitful and multiply. Be fruitful and
Well,
multiply.
one answer is be fruitful and multiply. What do you think? Love your God with all your like in the Bia Hafta. That's the Shema. Any other ideas? What's the first?
I'm not sure it's the first, but I think it might be. It's love thy neighbor as thyself.
Okay, love thy neighbor as thyself. That's in my Torah portion. My mitzvah. That's actually in the middle of the Torah. So by definition, not going to be the first. Okay, but what you're thinking of is when Hillel is asked what's the most important, right? And the one foot sword, right? What love your neighbor as yourself. All the rest is commentary. Go and learn it. Sign up for Rabbi Roman's course. That's what Hillel said. Okay, all right. So, any other suggestions? What's the first mitzvah? And the prize goes to the almost birthday girl tomorrow, okay? Okay, all right, yes, be fruitful and multiply
That's what I thought.
is the first, okay? So that's our, again, my apologies to the people who are at home. Let's use a different color. We are gonna make our own, we're gonna make our own Talmud. So let me see if I have a couple different colors here to represent different different things. Okay, all right, so the quote from the Torah, or what I said is the proof text, right? Is
Be fruitful.
be
Yeah.
fruitful and
Multiply.
multiply. Okay. Now, one question might be, and I'm not putting this one up there yet, not where I want to go. One question might be, well, why is that the first one?
Well, that's a good question.
Okay, you know,
Self-evident to me that if you don't do that, it's over.
okay, all right. So
It's a short story.
Rabbi John says, okay, it's self-evident. It's self-evident, period.
Right.
If you don't do it, and if enough people don't do it, it's over, exclamation mark.
Well, wait,
Right.
right.
I'm doing the thing with Margaret, right? Okay, all right.
But wait a minute,
But wait a minute, Rabbi Ricky says,
you said, if everybody did it, multiple people, so where were all those other multiple people?
Rabbi Ricky says, wait a minute, this occurs so early in the
There
Torah,
weren't a lot of other people.
right? They're only Adam and Eve at this point.
Let's see.
Okay. Same, you know, same argument is because if they're not gonna be fruitful and multiply,
It's over.
then it's over, then it's over. Okay, all right, so you see how the process goes, all right?
It's yours, really.
All right, so, but here's what we're gonna do. So here's our Mishnah. Okay, that's our Mishnah. Now, I think this purple will work, right? Okay, so there's our Mishnah. Okay, and I'll start it off. Rabbi Norm asks, all right, how do you know when you have fulfilled the mitzvah?
Right. How many is fruitful?
Okay. If the commandment is, now when we're having this discussion, we know all the other 612 by heart, right? Okay, so I can use any of them for an example. I know whether or not I've fulfilled the mitzvah of eating matzah for 7 days. I either have or have not, right? Okay, all right. So that's how do I know when I have fulfilled the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply? Rabbi Chris said,
You have the proof is in the pudding.
Is that Spanish phrase? Okay, the proof is in the pudding. When you have a child.
No, you have to.
No, wait. Okay, just come on, okay. What's your, what?
Is one child enough?
No,
The question is one child enough, because
you have to replace.
because this number,
Right.
it says multiply, so by definition, one child is not gonna be enough.
You need two to replace yourself.
Gene, come on.
Well, you have fulfilled it if you have attempted to have children.
Oh, you fulfilled the mitzvah if you have attempted, but
No.
let's take a vote. How many of us think that would qualify, that you fulfill the mitzvah just if you have attempted?
No.
But you need a definition for fruitful.
We need a definition or illustrations.
What does that mean? What does that mean? No.
They are.
Okay, go ahead, Ricky.
I think it means first you have to replace yourselves.
So that-
The two, husband, male.
Okay, well,
You have to replace.
except,
those two,
okay, all right,
and
okay,
then-
but wait a minute, Rabbi Norm jumps in and said, we better double check, because is the mitzvah, many of the mitzvot are written in singular, many of them are written in plural. Is this one written in singular or in plural? It's actually written in the plural.
It's gotta be. because
Peru or vu,
It takes
it's in the
two.
plural, so
It takes two,
take two to tango,
right, two to tango.
Yeah,
So
Right.
you first have to produce two.
okay,
Replace yourself, but multiply, so it should be four.
so it should be four, because each of
You
the,
wanna, at least
each
four.
two, okay, all right.
Okay,
I
I
would say
would agree.
three.
You'd say,
You don't agree?
Rabbi Lori says three, why?
Because you're replacing yourself and you're adding one, I mean, as a.
Ah, okay, no, it doesn't need to be four, it only needs to be three, because you replaced yourself plus added one. That's not really multiplying, that's a different arithmetic
Right.
process.
It said
So
multiply.
most people would say, but we'll include it in respect. Okay, who is it? Maggie, yeah.
I don't agree with any of that. I was married for 2 years and I have 2 kids. I think I done my job. I mean,
I have only two of them.
it was not feeling 2 years.
All right, okay. I don't, but, sorry for this pun, but I don't want to belabor the point. I've used that before.
50% mortality rate, it has to be 8 children.
Right, well, but that's something else. What was the mortality rate? Okay.
That's
Now-
what I mean.
now, can you picture Anybody up there? No, all right, but can you picture all of these, including the laughter, if you will, all of these being written down then, and all the side comments, and then if they were written down, now think of whether it's next week, whether it's next month, whether it's next year, whether it's 10 years from now, somebody coming along and saying, whoa, that Rabbi Roman must have had a real interesting class. It really sounds like it was an interesting discussion, kind of thing. But they were all wrong because they left out one important piece of this. How can you be fruitful and multiply if unless you make sure that you have at least one of each sex? Right, okay, so actually, the answer by majority vote is,
2 of each.
okay, no, that each person must be responsible for two, a minimum of 2, and male and female.
So you keep going.
So you keep going, right? If you haven't provided for male and female, you keep going. And then somebody all the way down here says, like Jean said, what about my grandfather Rashi, who only had women? Are we really going to say that this what they call one of the Gedolei Hador, one of these great men of the generation, that he didn't fulfill the mitzvah?
Was a lot.
Are we really gonna say that? And so they start arguing back and forth and and I'm gonna cut it short. What's the result? What's the final answer?
The blood, the seed, the blood, the seed.
Well, keep going.
Of the father will carry on down to the sister, to the mom, to the daughters, and then carry down to the grandchildren.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. In other words, the first grandson
Yeah.
that's born reverts back to his credit.
Okay, right.
Okay, but that's all written down. That's all debated. that's all, that's the way the process, that's the way the process goes. Specifically with that, and Rocky is the perfect example, because he only had daughters. So they had to eventually, I'm sorry,
Zalopolid, or however you pronounce, only had daughters. Way back.
Solovkha,
Solovkad, is that what it was?
he was Solovkha.
Can you imagine the pressure of Rashi's daughters to get married?
Yep, okay, all right.
First grandson, your first male? I mean, is that how?
Yeah, but I have a biological
Okay,
son.
son, okay.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so pretty much that's what I wanted to, so that's the Talmudic process.
That's wonderful.
In a nutshell, I mean, we could obviously be studying and questioning and having fun with it. It's not always fun, but
It's like the British.
we have a lot of, yeah.
Oh, that is fun.
Yeah, and some of it is case law, and some of it is this, and some of it is that. And then, of course, you run into the problem of, and this is something else that we'll talk about during the course of the year with the Torah project, is when this was all being written down, they didn't all have the same Torah text.
Okay.
All right, so there was some variant texts that had minor little, nothing really major, but they had minor emendations, or things that were words that were missing, or or whatever. And then wait a minute, my Torah doesn't say that.
Yeah.
But I'm really going to question Rabbi Yochanan, who was okay. Chris, did you remember?
Yeah, just a question. When you're talking about the Torah, the Talmud that was written in Babylonia, or Babylonian Talmud, was that what they were in exile, obviously, in Babylon, correct?
Well, no, these are people who, without going into a whole long lesson of Jewish history. So exiled to Babylon when the first temple was
Right, was
destroyed,
destroyed.
right? Okay, all right. Then 100 years later, those who wanted to return to Jerusalem and the Promised Land could do so.
Right.
Okay, all right. But many stayed. How do we know that? That's the Purim story. That's Mordecai and Esther and whatever. Those are all people who stayed in Babylon, which is Persia.
Wow.
Okay, Shushan, which is Susa.
Mhm.
All right, and they said that, and that was still a major Jewish, more than just a city, major source of Jewish population. Not that many went back to Jerusalem.
And the ones that did,
Right.
it was confrontational.
Yeah, and very right.
So the Talmud we're talking about was written in Babylon with the rabbis and the group of people that remained in
Yeah,
Babylon.
hundreds of years later.
Okay,
Right,
But I
hundreds of years later.
everybody went back.
Which one are you talking? That's yeah, it comes from that
does.
yeah.
It's not what these books
Yeah.
are.
Right, oh, okay, gotcha, all right, okay, so,
I gotta read that.
okay, so do you want to, well, you don't just sit and read it, I'm sorry.
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
I had so much fun.
No, but that would be an interesting kind of class to do, all right.
Yeah. the Talmud,
okay.
I'm curious.
All right, let me do. Trying to think time wise. Okay, so I said that we have two kinds of midrash. Now midrash begins at the same time period. Right? Midrash is more legend and lore rather than understanding the mitzvot. Okay? Midrash is more trying to explore, not 100%, but generally speaking, more to try to understand the values, the mores, the ethics, if you will, of the Jewish community through parables, through stories. Midrash, I think I said last week, is filling in the blanks. Okay, it's providing and listening to those voices that aren't heard in the text. So Midrash, by definition, doesn't need the proof text, right? Midrash tries to enhance the biblical text or the Torah text. Classic examples of I don't remember which examples I used last week, but so Pharaoh's daughter like pulls the baby Moses out of a little basket in the Nile River, right? Okay. The daughter, we assume the daughter is aware that daddy in the first documented act of anti-Semitism, that daddy has said all Jewish males must be killed, right? She sees this baby, sees that it's been circumcised, says, aha, this is an Israelite baby. And what does she say next? Or what does she do next? I'll ask that first. What does she do?
Takes them.
She holds him out, she saves his life.
Yeah.
Okay. What does that tell us about her relationship with daddy?
Probably a little bit troubled.
Probably, okay, you know,
Rebellious.
all right. Now, long-term Jewish tradition would call her a righteous Gentile. Okay, whatever. But we don't know what the motivation is because we don't know anything about her background. We just know that she's the prince, she's the daughter, she's the princess.
Did she have
But
any
but
other
we
children?
can. Pardon me?
Did she have any other children?
Not that we know. Not that we know.
Unable to bear.
Well, that's a midrash.
Right, exactly.
That's a midrash. That's trying to understand and add on this layer to make it more, to make it more relevant, to make it more understandable.
Homework for next week, we all have to write a little mission and bring it in, right?
Midrash.
Midrash.
I'm gonna provide you with some interesting one, with one especially, okay, all right. So, it's filling in the word. And she adopts him, whatever that means in those days, takes him back into the palace.
Yeah.
The next sentence is, and he grew up, and one day went out and saw an Egyptian taskmaster killing, oppressing an Israel. What do we call them? What were his wonder years? Well, who taught him? Did his mother still teach him because she was nursing him? We just don't know. Did he know that he was an Israelite at that point? We don't know. So Midrash provides legends and parables and whatever to try to fill in the blanks.
Couldn't he see that he was circumcised?
But
Did he look at anybody else?
I don't know, right? He may have lived a privileged lifestyle and didn't look under the kilts or whatever that's called. Whatever they're called in Egyptian. Okay, all right, or here's another one, okay? Remember the story? It's in the book of Numbers that Aaron and Miriam come to Moses and accusing him and saying he married a Cushite woman, right? And Miriam is stricken with, turns all white, right? Whatever, she has to be quarantined out of the camp, whatever. Moses says, Oy El na rafana Allah, God, please heal her. I forgive her and whatever. Where did all that come from? What does she mean? Aaron doesn't get punished for that one incidentally, punished for other things, but not for that one. But what does she mean? He married a Cushite, that's an Ethiopian. What's the accusation? We don't really know. There's no real background there. So the Midrash comes along, it's beautiful, beautiful literature that comes along saying how Miriam is she's not accusing him, she's not being, she's not being racist. Okay, which was one of the old ways of understanding it. Well, he married a black woman. That's not the way most of Jewish tradition understands it. It's that, wait a minute, he already has a wife. Okay, he already has a wife, and what's happening to the first wife? Is he neglecting her? And things like that. So there's all kinds of literature in there, but we just don't know. But they try to provide understanding or suggested answers. Most of Midrash, there are two types of Midrash. There's Midrash Halakha, you know the word Halakha, that's Jewish law, okay? So there's Midrash that tries to expand upon or explain if it doesn't think that the Talmud or whatever has enough explanation. So there's Midrash Halakha, but most of the Midrash, and certainly the literature that I love so much, is Midrash Haggadah. Not Haggadah like from Passover, but it's Agadah with an aleph for you Hebrew students, okay? With an Agadah, it's a chataf with the shva next to it, but forget that. All right, it's Agadah, which is legend, or legend or lore, and the parables and stuff like that. So there are collections that go all the way back into the 3rd, 4th, 5th centuries, and continue all the way through into 20th and 21st century. One of my favorite professors, close friend, we shared a lot of things together through the years. His first name is Norman, also Norman Cohen, who now is retired from teaching at the Hebrew Union College in New York. Has a number of series, and if I was going to teach anything about rabbinic lore, I would be using his books rather than Talmud. I just love the stuff that Norman has done with putting contemporary 20th, 21st century psychological insights into some of the stories, especially in Genesis, but about Moses and things like that. And it's great stuff. But this one, I can't hand it out. I have to read it. I'm sorry. This one was actually written by a student of mine. Okay. And now, okay, one more thing. You remember seeing Cecil B. DeMille's 10 Commandments?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Or more modern is Steven Spielberg's Prince of Egypt.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, of which there's a Broadway show coming today. Made a Broadway show. And it's been playing in London and the West End. Now it's gonna come to the United States. But though that's Midrash. And if you go back to and watch 10 Commandments, Cecil B. DeMille, it's all Midrash. Half of what's in that movie it is not in the Torah.
Yeah.
Okay, it's Rabbi Cecil B. DeMille's Midrash, his interpretation, what he assumes Korach said to Moses, and Moses saying to Korach. He assumes that Charlton Heston and Yul Brynner were competing for the same daughter of the Pharaoh. You know, whatever. There's nothing in the Torah about that.
Right.
But it made for a good movie. Okay, all right. So anyway, and I'm sharing this especially not because I take credit. Yes, he's a student of mine, but that's besides the point. But this is, and you'll recognize it immediately, this is from this week's Torah word. Okay?
Okay.
I can't believe this is now more than 20 years later. Monday evening. Yes, Lot, Abe said to his nephew on his state-of-the-art 900 megahertz two-line cordless phone. Times have been rough for me too since we split the business. Not, thought Abe, who was having his best year ever. It must be hard since your wife, he searched for the right word, since your wife ultimately passed to go it alone. But you have your girls, right? Okay, I know exactly. Beep. It's fun. Darn it, it's call waiting, muttered Abraham. Let me see who it is. He looks down at the small caller ID box on his phone. Private was all the screen revealed. Abe said, I better take it. It's probably Hagar calling to complain about my being late with Manny's tuition. I'll talk to you later. Goodbye. So Abe clicked the flash button to pick up the other call. Hello? Abraham, here I am. This is God. Take your, what, who is it, Rod? No, this is God. I have a test for you. Take your, well, hey, when I want a religious test, buddy, I'll call my rabbi, okay? And Abe clipped off the line and angrily returned the phone to his cradle. At least it got him off the phone. His nephew could rub salt on his wounds all night. I wonder what religious group that was, Abe thought as he flipped on the television. I suppose I could have been nicer to him, but some things just can't wait, and he turned on ESPN. He watched the baseball highlights. I hope not last night's game, but he watched the baseball highlights leading off the show, but the brief conversation kept on replaying in his head. There was something familiar about the whole thing. Oh, well, the evening's events quickly left his mind. Good morning, Eli, Abraham called mid-slurp on the coffee. Morning, boss, Eli replied. Eliezer had been Abe's assistant for as long as he could remember. Abe could never have run the business without him. Are you busy this morning? Abe asked. Nah, said Eli, just the usual. One of the trucks rolled into the garage. It was blue with large white letters. Abraham and nephew plumbing. Abe hadn't changed the name after buying Lot out of the business several years back. It was already a brand name, the largest plumbing firm on this side of the Hudson River. If people asked, Abe told them that Eliezer was his nephew. Abraham walked through the hallway, finishing his coffee. He greeted a warm hello each staff person who he passed. His secretary, Keturah, was talking into his phone, and he approached the office. She gave a broad smile and friendly wave. He responded with a simple nod. After his affair with his secretary, Hagar, many years ago, Abe was wary about being too friendly anymore. Sarah was so suspicious, and he didn't want that service all over again. There are some faxes on your desk, boss, Keturah told him as he dropped into his office chair. Abe picked up the pile of papers. Hard orders, job contracts, nothing that couldn't wait. Oh, except for that last one, which caught his eye. It consisted of only one sentence. He stopped and he read it. Take your son, your favored one, Isaac, whom you love. Go to the land of Moriah and offer him up as a sacrifice. There, on the heights that I will show you. Abe dropped the paper. What the heck is this? Keturah, he yelled out. Secretary came running in. Yes, sir. Where's the cover page for this fax? He demanded, sharing the paper. There was none. It was there by itself this morning. Abraham looked at the fax more carefully. There was no heading at the top indicating a fax number. Then he noticed for the first time 3 more letters. G-O-D. Eliezer, get in here. Abe barked into the phone intercom. What do you make of this? Sounds like a threat against Isaac from a religious nut. That's exactly what I thought, Abe said. This psycho called me at home last night, but I hung up on him. Where's Moriah? I think it's in Pennsylvania. No, that's Bethlehem. Well, who would want to hurt Isaac? I don't know. Maybe one of those upstart plumbing companies is trying to scare me. Maybe, wait a minute. G-O-D. Oh, wait a minute. That new firm across town, Delancey Plumbing. Sure, they think they're God's gift to plumbing. Gary Delancey and his brother Otto. I get it. Gary Otto Delancey. G-O-D. That's really sick. Exactly, said Abe, calming down. Well, No one should play hardball with me and expect to give in. See about getting Isaac some protection. Eliezer nodded, left the room. Abe shook his head in belief. Hurt Isaac? He wouldn't let it happen, not by anyone. There had been that mistake 13 years ago, just after Isaac was born. Sarah had found out that Abe was seeing Hagar again. It got so ugly. The fighting, the lawyers, the threats of divorce. Abe had to relocate Hagar across the country. But it was Manny who took the brunt of the fight. Ishmael, his then 13-year-old son from his affair with Hagar. Everyone called him Manny. Manny suffered the most. Abe had done a lousy job of protecting him from the pain of being there for him. Well, not this time. Keturah, Abe called into the intercom, get me 2 tickets to tomorrow's Dodgers game. Me and Isaac. He went back to work. Isaac was yelling at the Dodgers hitter at the game. They were sitting along the first baseline at Shea Stadium in the 4th inning. Isaac was balancing 2 hot dogs, a scorecard, a soda, and his relentless badgering of the Dodgers players all at once. Abe smiled at his son. This should happen more often, Abe thought. I really need to spend more time with him. Beep, beep, beep. Abraham smacked his beeper with his right hand. Who would be calling him now? He looked at the readout. 800, call God. Call God. Enough was enough. I'll be right back. Isaac rolled his eyes to signify he didn't care. He returned to the watching the opposing batter. The bodyguard to Isaac's left grunted in acknowledgement. He reached the top of the stadium stairs. Abraham flipped open his cellular phone and dialed the number back. A voice answered on the first ring. This is God. Listen, buddy, Abe shouted into the phone. You stop bothering me. Stop threatening my son. If you ever come near him, you'll regret it. Understand? Stay away. Abe slammed the phone shut and turned to his seat. Isaac had finished the hot dogs and now wanted a pretzel. Yeah, of course, Abe nodded. He sent the bodyguard to the concession line. As Isaac updated his scorecard, Abe looked at his innocent face. He's still as beautiful as when he was a miracle baby. Abe and Sarah never expected to have a child. They were an older couple. Fertility treatments had all failed, and Abe had gotten his secretary pregnant. But Abe could remember that miraculous day so clearly. He and Sarah were playing gin rummy one hot afternoon. The doorbell rang. To their surprise, it was 3 of their doctors. Dr. Gabriel was Sarah's OB-GYN. Dr. Michaels was their fertility specialist. And Dr. Raphael was the family's general practitioner. They were all part of the same medical group, but Abe was quite surprised to see them together at the front door. He invited them in. They got to the point right away. They had confirmed all the tests. They knew, given both their ages, that Sarah's medical history and everything else was nigh impossible, but it was true. Sarah was pregnant. At this news, Sarah burst into laughter, thinking it was a cruel joke. But after the doctors showed the couple their finding, they weren't laughing, they cried. A child of our own, exclaimed Sarah. It truly is a miracle from God. Abraham embraced his wife. They held each other for a long time. No one's ever going to hurt my miracle, Abe thought to himself. Next evening, you got mail, the computer cried out. Abe clicked on it. To Abe the plumber at AOL.com. From God at eternity.net. Subject, misunderstanding about previous messages. Abraham, I think you might not have heard my previous messages. I simply want you to take Isaac to the land of Moriah and offer him as a sacrifice there in the heights that I will show you. More will follow. God. The instant message screen suddenly flashed on. Someone online was sending him a message. Someone had the screen name, God. I see you got my email. Abe, stay away from my son. God, just do as I say, Abraham. Why should I? Don't you remember all those promises? How I will bless those who bless you and curse those who will curse you? Well, buddy, I'm about to curse you. Don't you understand how you got the message to move to where you are now? Abe stopped typing. He remembered he was at a crossroads, suffering under his father's shadow in their plumbing business in Utica. Sarah was unhappy. Lot was unhappy. Abe had called that radio call-in show, Dr. Galway. The doctor immediately sized up the problem and told him to start his own life. Abe had waffled about when he should move on. The doctor tried to end the call, telling him that the show needed to wrap up, but Abe had remained on the line. The doctor said, well, Abe, it really has been nice chatting with you, but I got to get going. What? Get going, get going. Dr. Yahweh had shouted and hung up. And so Abe left Utica about the end of the week. Another message came across the screen. Do you see now? I don't know who you are, Abe said, but if you ever come near my wife, my son, or me, I'll kill you. Right now, I'm going to call the police. Friday evening. The rabbi's sermon was somewhat interesting, but Abe's mind kept wandering. He hadn't been to services since the High Holy Days, but something today made him want to go. Sarah was thrilled, Isaac was not, but they went and it calmed Abe down. Isaac didn't understand why his dad was spending so much time with him lately, but secretly he was glad. The rabbi was starting a new point in the sermon when, oh God, his cell phone was ringing. He'd forgotten to turn it off. The rabbi stopped mid-sentence, distracted by the jarring, inappropriate sound. Every head in the congregation turned towards Abe with a nasty look. People began to whisper. Abe quickly moved down the aisle towards the door. Abe made it to the foyer in time to catch the phone mid-third ring. Hello? Abraham, don't hang up. You just don't get it, Abe told the voice. I don't know who you are, but you're sick. Wait a minute. If you're God, why would you call and interrupt a rabbi's sermon? I've heard him before. He gave it a couple of years ago. It only goes downhill from here. And throw that one. Hey, Abe interrupted. I recognize your voice now. I knew it sounded familiar. Now it all comes clear. 10, 15 years ago, I called that religious psychic line, 1-900-ASK-LORD. Ask Lord. I was having these problems with Sarah and Hagar. I spoke to you. That's right. You made all those ridiculous predictions about my having lots of children and giving me promised land and so on. Well, I only have 2 kids, 1 house and a business. So there go your predictions. Now you encouraged me that painful elective surgery too. I mean, on an 8-day-old, it's one thing, but I'm not a young guy. Those promises will all come true. Well, true or not, my son means everything to me. I won't have some religious 900 number psychic ordered around my life. Look, the mourner's Kaddish is about to begin. Might I go and pray that one, God? Saturday afternoon. The message light on the answering machine was blinking just once. Sarah, Isaac, and Abe came back from their spontaneous picnic in the park. The message said, Abraham, this is God. This is the last time you'll hear from me. There's no use in my trying to reach you anymore. I used to find ways and you used to hear me, but now, despite all the means of communication and technology, so many things seem to get in the way. Something seems to keep you from hearing me, believing me, and trusting me. I will still talk to you, Abraham, as I do to all my children, but from now on, you'll have to go looking for my messages. You'll have to try and hear my voice, and it won't be easy. Enjoy your time with Sarah and Isaac, and hey, give Ishmael a call too. There I go again, trying to send messages when you won't let yourself hear. Take care, Abraham, and I hope that you'll try and hear my voice again one day. The message light stopped blinking. Okay. That's
You
okay.
wrote that?
So no, I didn't write that. One of my students wrote it.
You can tell,
So that's-
you can date it by the fact that the facts and the.
Oh, of course,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
right. Well, I told you 20 years, it's 20 years ago already. Okay, all right. You got paid off, right. But it was, when I first saw it, it was very, very, very creative. But that's modern midrash. So here again, we're gonna do it. And again, my apologies to those behind me and, and whatever. So we'll go back to a different story, not this one. But we encountered it a little bit before. Cain and Abel. Right? Okay. What do you remember about Cain? What do you remember about Cain and Abel's story? Okay, Cain and Abel are the 2 sons, might not be fruitful and multiply, but Cain and Abel are the 2 sons of Adam and Eve. And what do you remember?
Constant conflict between them,
Why? What's the conflict?
rivalry,
Yeah, today we would call it civil rivalry.
definitely to be it. I think what was, wanted to honor God, the other one wanted to honor himself, I guess, selfish.
Does the Torah say that?
No,
But,
no, they both wanted to honor God. They
Both-
both
they both
wanted
wanna-
to,
Honor God,
and they both wanted to impress
well,
God.
that's true in
And-
some way, yeah.
okay,
Conflict was over the first son inheriting.
no,
No.
that's Jacob and Esau, Jacob and Esau.
So, you're right.
You're a couple, you're another generation, a couple generations, you know, 42 generations to be exact.
Okay.
all right.
Was it that one offered the fruit of the earth, the
Okay,
grain, and the other
right.
offered a lamb or an animal?
Yeah.
Okay.
One was the shepherd.
One's a shepherd and the other is a farmer.
One was the
Okay, all right.
appropriate sacrifice and the other was an inappropriate sacrifice based on what the situation was.
That's closer to the actual text,
Yeah,
right?
but why
Okay.
was the one inappropriate
Yeah,
over the other
I
one?
Oh,
don't
based
based
on-
on know what it was. I mean, I know
They
there
were
were
doing sacrifices for
preferred
different
one
situations.
to the other.
Yeah.
Right,
That was after God had already.
What specifically did they offer?
Sacrifice.
What do you know? I mean,
Oh,
I
it
can't
wasn't
remember.
the best, it was it wasn't the best lamb or something, wasn't it, that it was not the purest, sweetest?
okay, well, here's what we're doing,
Wasn't the
but, you know,
best.
but, okay. All right, so God doesn't say anything.
Chemistry and.
God hasn't said anything at this point. Adam and Eve haven't said anything at this point.
Oh.
So we don't know what kind of training, what kind of background, what kind of, orientation,
Mhm.
Did both kids
They
go to
haven't
Sunday
seen,
school?
right.
well, it depends whether you're counting the midrash or not, okay? All right, okay. The, so here's the two. Okay. And God, they each offer a sacrifice.
Mhm.
Ricky's right in that one of them, it's specific, the Torah specifically says, one offered the choicest
Right.
Mhm.
of, or the best of, and the other was just offered a sacrifice. Okay,
Yeah.
but again, we don't have any background for that. There's nothing before that said, and God prefers, later on we get that. Okay, God likes the smell of barbecue, so, wants that, but, okay, we don't have that yet. We don't know anything about Adam and Eve telling the boys what they should do. But each brings a sacrifice, okay? God accepts which one? Cain's or Abel's?
Abel.
Abel, okay, all right. Then the next sentence is, like, on the next day, they went to the field, they, plural, they went to the field, and Abel spoke to Cain. ...
Yeah,
I'm adding the ...
Yeah,
okay? And Cain rose up and slew, right? And killed his brother. I intentionally don't want to use the word kill, okay? And hit, okay?
Right.
And hit his brother. What's missing? I'll say it again, okay? On the next day, two of them went to the field, and Abel said to his brother, to Cain, ... and Cain rose up and hit his brother, so that.
We don't know what went on in that conversation.
We don't know, okay, so let's build a midrash. What did Abel say to Cain?
I hate you.
No.
No, that was.
I hate you.
Why did he say that?
Oh, no,
That's
came
what
to
we read.
Abel, Abel.
What did Abel, okay, so Abel spoke first. We
Uh,
know that Abel spoke first. We don't know if Cain replied,
reply.
okay? But let's play with it. Somebody's gotta watch and see if anybody does.
He was
Okay.
so
Go ahead, Gene, go ahead.
like Joseph and his brothers, Abel
Anticipating.
said to Cain, "Aren't I so great? I gave the right, appropriate, and best sacrifice."
Nana poo poo.
As would Joseph say later on,
Uh,
the way he was so stuck on himself
Aaron,
and doesn't mommy and daddy, don't mommy and daddy love me
And
more?
even in the sense in the story the Lord was talking about, Jacob and
Right.
Esau.
And
Okay.
so, like the brothers who then threw Joseph in the pit, Cain said, "Screw you, whack."
Okay,
So I think Abel came and said something arrogant.
Able in,
Abel, as we said, was lording it over his brother. Okay, all right.
And
possible,
if, you know, then he hit him, but I don't think he knew what hitting him would do, because they had never done that. They hadn't experienced death, they hadn't
No, I agree
experienced
with,
hitting.
Angela, I agree with you on that, okay.
They killed
Okay.
animals though.
They killed animals,
Yeah, but that,
but
yeah,
they knew that there was a difference
said they
between
could-
animals and humans,
Yes,
right,
that's true,
okay,
that's true.
all right.
now that you put it that way, you're really able had to just push the button
Okay,
that
now, okay, go ahead, go ahead, because then I was gonna leave it in a different direction too, go ahead.
Maybe Abel was very humble and sweet and, you know, and he was just a godly child or whatever you want to say. And his brother wasn't, and, he just was pissed off from getting death.
Yeah, what if Abel said, "Gee, I'm so sorry that God didn't accept yours.
Yeah.
Do you want my help?
Yeah.
yeah,
Can I show you what what I did? I really, I don't understand it. I don't understand it. Let's try to figure it out. Why did God, but we don't know.
The sheep.
They could have been talking about sheep,
And
right?
he
They
just
could have been
was-
talking about mom and dad. They
And,
could
it-
have, right,
and
right, okay.
Cain was just-
We don't know, okay,
We don't
all right.
But
Cain-
we have a clue though. Because God confronts Abel,
Cain.
Cain,
later.
right,
That's-
after
yeah.
the incident happened, but
Yeah,
there's
and what does God say to him?
why are you so angry? Why have you, what is your countenance so angry?
I'm not
No.
remembering.
no, not-
Let me bring my Bible. Yeah.
It's in the- it's in where she's from.
Yeah.
Is it mad or is he upset?
Well, yeah.
All right.
I know, that's all.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. The bottom line is at the end of what she's quoting, okay? The bottom line is where is your brother? His blood cries out to me from the earth. And
Am I?
Am I-
And- no, he says something else first. He says something else first.
Yeah, he says, what are you
He-
so angry? What you countenance fallen? Because, if you wanna do well, you can master
Right,
this.
otherwise sin crouches at the door.
Exactly.
Right,
Give
uh-huh.
me the reason why his attitude is so terrible, and that he can change that attitude and accept what God has said, or say, I need to find my Bible.
So maybe, no, you don't need to find about it. And
But-
maybe God is reassuring him
That he can
That-
change.
right,
That he can make
that
this
that
situation
this
different.
that although this was an ultimate tragedy,
Right, it's at the
Okay.
door, that's it, it's just, the enemy is at the door, but you can change that.
yeah, it's not an enemy, it's more like the
Something like
evil
that.
impulse
I
kind of
can
thing, right.
understand.
right,
Right.
right,
But
Okay.
he is, telling God is giving him an answer to his dilemma.
and Cain says. Hashomer achi anochi, and
Yeah.
it says, but it says, lo yadati, it says. We usually say it, God says, where's your brother? Right, where's your brother, you know, and Cain answers almost tauntingly, I don't know, you know, no. That's all of us thinking back to when our mom and dad said, you know, you know, what happened to that little that broke, you know, I don't know, I didn't do it. All right, and you know, Cain says, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? Am I supposed to know where he is all the time? And what again, what I was saying, like the ethic or the value is, yeah, we are our brother's keeper. We're supposed to know where and what's happening to, we're supposed to be concerned about. But this is what Bev is saying, and I happen to believe similarly. Cain is also saying, I don't know what happened. I don't understand this. I've never seen that before. You know, I hit him, but boys, you know, we play all the time. We hit each other all the time. We fell down, and all of a sudden there's this red stuff is coming out of his head, and he won't get up. Right? You know, Abel, get up. What's the matter? Okay, and he says, I don't know what happened. Okay, I was trying to protect my brother. I was trying, because you read the Hebrew different ways. Okay, so that's why I said we play along with it. There are so many places in the Torah where there are these missing
Possibilities for.
right, the unseen scenes and the unheard voices, and that's what Midrash tries to do, not just to fill in the blanks from that generation, but for all generations, so that we can learn from it. And whatever, so that like I said, I find it to be magnificent literature.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do this. All right. Back on this, the timeline then. Let's take it through the end of the timeline, and then we'll do it that way. So we come into the Middle Ages. We come into in some places, especially like Spain, Portugal, the Golden Age up until the end of the 15th century, and in France and in North Africa, there is great scholarship. A lot of what's written, incidentally, is written in Arabic, because there's such positive relations between the Jews and the Muslims at that point. But so much has happened. Like I said, there's this. What I would maintain, and you've heard this from me before, what I would maintain is mainstream Judaism is always reforming, is always changing. Circumstances and the influences of other cultures or other faiths and science, and whatever. Sometimes in stronger, with stronger influences, and sometimes less so. But I would maintain that Judaism was always open to that. Mainstream was always open to those kind of changes and reinterpretations. So the next period in this timeline of Jewish law is what we generally call the time of codes and commentaries. Right? and that's where you have the Rashi, you have the Rashi or others who make comments on every single word in the Torah, every single word in the rest of the Bible, every single word of the Talmud, and whatever. And each of the different commentators has his own, and for the most part, the collections that we have are his rather than hers, but for the most part. There are some women commentators, but they're much more recent. There are some women, incidentally, we're starting to get some of those collections now. There's some collections of prayers and poetry that in the 1200s, 1300s, that the Jewish women wrote. There's a particular form. We think of the liturgical poetry of many of the rabbis, and this is what we're most familiar with, that they're called piyutim. A piyut is like a liturgical poem. It might be an acrostic like the Lecha Dodi, something like that. It might be an alphabetical, whatever. But the women's poetry and prayers, which mostly, frankly, dealt with women's issues, the pains and the sorrows and childbirth and miscarriages and things like that. The loss of children, the woes of being home when their husbands were away, and the collections are usually are known in more in Yiddish as penis. Okay, and it's not tahina like hummus. It's not that. It's you might have heard the word in liturgy in prayer book. You might have heard the word tachanun. Okay, tachanun are like petitionary prayers. Remember the phrase El Chanun Barachum,
Yeah.
God merciful and gracious, kind of thing. So these tachinas, they're requests, I guess, for God to understand. So some of the famous ones, I should say famous, some of the ones that are becoming more well known and even quoted now are Tahina's poetry or psalms or prayers that the women would recite before lighting Shabbos candles, for example, of asking special blessings on their families, things like that. But they didn't make it into the prayer book, obviously. But we're now finding those collections.
What again about the year group were those collections created?
Oh, well, some of them go back to the 1200s and 1300s.
That far back?
Yeah, some of them. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Just a quick question. When did literacy become promoted broadly?
It's a great question, John. I can't really answer except in the following way. When, I have to jump, okay?
Yeah.
When the Shulchan Aruch is written or compiled, which is in the 1530s, okay? As a code of Jewish law, right? So we've got, again, we started with Torah, which might be this size. Then we went to Mishnah, which was 6 volumes, right? Then we went to Talmud, which is 63, whatever, okay? It's unmanageable now, all right? So starting in the 1200s, 1300s, after time of Maimonides and Rashi and things like that. Maimonides writes his Guide to the Perplexed, but it's more philosophical,
Right.
rather and commentaries on Torah and Talmud and whatever. But it's more philosophical. It's Maimonides was a great scholar of Greek philosophy and things like that, okay? And a big, and mysticism and Kabbalah is starting, and
Yeah.
Maimonides is saying, no, we have to be rational in our approach, and, okay. But they come to the 1500s, and for whatever reason, just like Judah the Prince said, wait a minute, we need to kind of consolidate, we need to systematize and have available the 6 volumes of the Mishnah. So some of the rabbis, the most famous of which is Joseph Cairo, and I jokingly said that's before he invented syrup.
Yes.
Right. But Joseph Cairo in Sfat, is Sephardic, consolidates everything into a code of Jewish law. Not talking about mitzvot at all, talking about Jewish practice. Okay, he's down to 4 volumes now. Okay, but one is home practice, one is communal rituals, another one is going to be purity, things like that. But he doesn't need to include a lot about the sacrifices, because there is no sacrificial cult anymore, right? We don't have the temple, so we're not offering sacrifices, but we do have prayer. So he has a lot of stuff about prayer.
He's updating bylaws.
If you will. Okay, so the Shulchan Aruch, I'll try to do this and get to the answer to your question eventually. The Shulchan Aruch, which basically means the prepared table. So it's laid out for you, okay? And you want to take from, we're back to the meal imagery. You want to take from this main course, you want to take from that main course, you want to take from this main course. Here's the prepared table for you, okay? 4 volumes. Okay? The introduction to which specifically says, I'm writing this, or I'm editing this, or compiling this, I forget the exact translation, this code of Jewish law for the men and women of the Israelite community who wish to follow and live Jewish lives and have their homes based on. So the implication was that women, at least some women, were literate. Okay, by the early 1500s. Okay. Now, exactly what it was that they were able to study or read, we don't know. Probably not Talmud and things like that. Recipe books, and maybe some of these tefillas, maybe some of these little, poems and prayers that were specifically for the women. But definitely by the time of the Shulchan Aruch and his 4 volumes for how to run a Jewish home and how to live a Jewish life based on what the religious practice was like at that time and place. Time and place being, 1500s. Place meaning Safed. That's the basis of not only mysticism, but the Sephardic community. The chief rabbi of the Sephardic world always lived in Sfat up on the top of the mountain. And so when Solomon Alkabetz writes the Chadodi and talks about watching the Shabbat bride come up the mountaintop, that's to be able to celebrate with them. That's the imagery. But it doesn't stop there, because we're Jews. And so we don't like just Joseph Cairo or one rabbi, whether it's Hillel versus Shammai, whether it's anybody, Reform versus Orthodox, it doesn't matter. So Moses Isserles, okay, in the 1600s, right? No, I guess he's late. Okay, so Moses Isserles in Prague writes his commentary to the Shulchan Aruch, and in good, humble tradition, what does he call it? Well, if Cairo has written the prepared table, Israelis calls his the tablecloth.
Really? Is that what Mapa means?
That's Mapa. Mapa is the table to this day.
Oh,
As you go, you go to Israel and you want to buy a tablecloth, it's a Mapa. Okay. So that's the way it does. And so Shulchan Aruch, which was the code of Jewish law to this day, but it's Sephardic. So when you start to look at things about Passover, for example, totally different, what's kosher, what's not kosher on Passover. And certain things that Israelis comes along and says, well, wait a minute, we don't do it that way. We don't do it that way. Jewish law, again, this doesn't, what's the right phrase? Jewish practice, I'll do it that way. Jewish practice was for centuries that a wedding was to take place outside. Always. Wedding, always, no, that's not what the chuppah comes.
I know.
No, okay. Wedding always took place outside. Why? And at night. Okay. Why? Because the blessing, I mean, jokingly referred to it back here, the blessing that God gives to Abraham and Sarah is that your children shall be as numerous as the stars of the, so what better blessing? If that was good enough for Abraham and Sarah, should be good enough for every bride and groom to be able to look up and see, which is directly the problem of how am I supposed to look up, but there's a chuppah there.
Yeah.
No, well, yeah, later on. The chuppah was not the canopy underneath the bride and the groom. Chuppah was originally the term for the procession that brought the bride to the ceremony. That's originally the chuppah. Now she may have been covered by something to protect her from the sun or whatever. But all Jewish weddings were supposed to take place outdoors until we were living in Minsk or Pinsk or Budapest or Prague or whatever, where there's such a or Detroit. Where there's such a thing as cold weather, and the bride or the bride's mother said, "Wait a minute, we're not doing this outdoors. Are you kidding, Rabbi?" But was that valid? And somebody had to make a decision and say, wait a minute, the practice for hundreds of years is that a Jewish marriage, can you have it? That's the same kind of thing. I think I used as an example last week with about the head cover. Okay, that the question was, this is my lead into the last one down here, to responsa. Okay, once we started spreading out all over the world, there weren't that many rabbis around, and certainly not that many rabbis that wanted to travel to every single Green Valley or whatever all over the world. But there were Jewish communities all over the world, and so if they had a question, can we do a wedding inside for one reason or another? Can we do a wedding inside? Is it kosher? Is it valid? So you start with things like, what do you do if it gets to be Shabbos, gets to be sundown. This is not geographic, but it gets to be sundown, and you realize that you don't have any candles. Now, your Shabbat is defined by when you light candles. Okay, you look in the Mishnah of when does Shabbat start? It's when you light your candles. Somebody said, what happens if I forgot to buy candles this week? I forgot to go to Safeway, whatever it was.
So
If
you go to
I don't
Safeway.
have candles.
You go to
What do-
Safeway, you come back, the sun is already set, but Shabbos hasn't started yet. You come home, you light the candles, voila.
But
what
you
if,
can't,
what if
but
Safeway
but
is
it's, but
closed?
if the sun's already set, you certainly can't,
Right.
you know, pay for your, can't buy your candles.
But Shabbat hasn't started because you haven't.
No, Shabbat has started in a, but it's not
Yeah,
better,
the
but you
sundown,
can't.
But
That's when you can't.
So which is,
Three stars
you have to
or 2 stars?
prioritize, which is more important? Is it
Yeah.
more important to light your candles? Or is it more important to recognize that a Shabbat has started at sundown? Okay. And that even if you don't have candles, you still say the blessing. Okay, you're doing this anyway, right? But you know, you still say, and so they start to play with it. And some people say, well, like what you're saying, or some people say, well, okay, I'll put. If indeed there's this mystical tradition that I can close my eyes and not see that I've lit candles, all right, I could also be saying, well, then I by definition,
I don't know.
or exactly, I can say, yeah, well, then I can go into the store and pretend legal fiction that it's not Shabbat yet. Oh, okay, so, you know, so does the Cliff and Gene Schechter have the right to define for themselves when their Shabbat starts? Or does Shabbat start at 6:25 p.m., you know, no matter whether you've lit your candles
Or not.
or not? Legitimate questions. Okay, and you know, and all those kinds of questions, or I'm not gonna give an answer, but or the one that I was talking about before of, and this is one of the first, it is the first written reference to men praying with or without a hat. Okay, is some island somewhere, somebody realized that they had said their prayers and they had not, and their head was covered. And so they wrote a letter to a rabbi, you know, like let's say that it was that the island was in the Mediterranean. They wrote a letter to the rabbi in France or Spain, whatever, and said, we said our prayers. We realized that my head, that the head was covered. Was that wrong? Were my prayers, you know, inauthentic, not acceptable, whatever? And the answer that comes back is no. Your prayers are acceptable even if your head is covered, which leads us to believe that they didn't cover their heads. Okay, but that's only the Ashkenazim,
Right.
because the Sephardim who lived in the desert, okay, obviously wanted their heads covered. Okay, you know, and they based theirs on, well, Moses was on the top of the mountain for 40 days, 40 nights, came back down, he was so sunburned, you know, that he scared off all the people. So obviously, if it was good enough for Moses, we should cover our heads too. That kind of literature develops and continues to this day. Some of it is fascinating stuff. Some of it is, you know, very, 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 very practical. Some of it relates to questions that just came about in the 21st century. And I'll give you one, and then at that point we have to finish. But so here's the example. I use this as a joke for some of you may have heard it the other, last week or whatever. True story. Let it play out in your own minds. Okay. So a colleague of mine, I happen to know I've known him for years. I know his family. He's married to a cousin of somebody who's a member of my congregation. Whatever. Anyway, he in retirement, He's doing what I used to do a little bit, and he's serving as rabbi on a cruise ship. Okay, for the high holy days. And he just found out that he's gonna be on the cruise ship on Yom Kippur as it crosses the international date line.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
So here's a legitimate question.
Yeah.
Does he have 2 Yom Kippurs?
Do I have to fast twice?
Right, am I supposed to fast twice? Nowhere in Jewish law is there a fast longer than 25 hours. Okay, nowhere. So what are you supposed to, I mean, there is a legitimate answer. But it's that kind of a question. And he wants an authentic, he's much more traditional than I am, but he wants an authentic answer. Make sure that he does it correctly, and that whoever's Jewish who's on the ship with him, that he gives them the correct answer, so they don't go back to London or Sydney or wherever it is. And you say, it was the most interesting thing. We had 2 Yom Kippurs, and well, what did you do? Well, Rabbi Apotheker said we were supposed to do. Oh, no, that wasn't right. So he sent a letter out and said, okay, who's got the correct answer? Who did the research from?
Good.
Okay.
Those of us that were here last week know the answer. We know the answer.
Right.
Go ahead, Tony.
Whatever was, when you started your journey, and whatever would have been the Yom Kippur based on that. That's when the Yom Kippur.
Right. Because you always know when Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah.
And then you go 10 days from that day. Okay, everybody.